going live. First time I go live, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Nervous.
Well, welcome. This is Andre Faust with What's the Point? And tonight's guest that we have is, if I didn't lose them, amazing. We just did a test and everything. There we go. We got them on the screen. With me is Sharon Lee Solinet, and the notorious blogger Charles LeBlanc. And what we're going to talk about, which is really it's something we all need to pay attention, and it's the public perception of mental illness, on how we see the state of mind. Personally, I believe that there is no mental illness that exists. My feelings is that we learn behaviors, but others call it mental illness. Illness to me is a virus. Show me the bug, show me the virus, that's a sickness. So to start off, I'm going to have Sharon kind of lead us in. So your experience with the perception of individuals who have mental health, what's your experience?
Thanks you. First of all, thank you, Andre, for having me speak tonight with on this forum. It's important to for me personally. I've been in the system, and I am coming out of a very dark time myself personally. Had diagnosed depression. I know I had it probably when I was 6 or 7, but diagnosed when I was 18 when my mom was dying. But I also suffered PTSD, severe PTSD, for the last decade. And I'm really lucky that I kept pounding on doors and had people like my father, rest in peace, Dad, that helped me, help keep a roof over my head while I was getting well. But there was a lot of doors that were slammed in my face, literally. And it was a fight for survival every day. And the stigma attached to mental illness, it's appalling, and it's got to change. We don't look at people with cancer or MS or anything like that the way that we look at people with mental illness. And let me just say, my mom used to tell me this, Andre, we're only a paycheck away from that homeless guy in the corner, so it might do us well to remember that. And like you said about mental illness, I believe that we go through a lot of things in this life, and it can take us a lot of different places, and what we do with that is up to us. But there should be more things, more programs set up to help people that are suffering from mental illness of any kind.
Well, it's that perception. There's a dark shadow that's created when you refer to, mental illness. The way that I look at it is, 99% of the population experiences, mental health issues at one point or rather in their life. 1% are liars.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's true. It's true. And we've all faced and mental illness that can be brought on by traumas. There's a lot of different things that people don't understand. That brings on these things, and a lot of times it's in people's family. It's prevalent. Years ago, it wasn't talked about. It was pushed, shoved under the carpet, kind of a thing. It was like a dirty secret. And let me just say, I've been in the system. I know what it's like, and it's not that much different these days. And I'm passionate about speaking out about it because I am. I studied to be a mental health worker years ago when I lived in Halifax, and everyone was so careful about calling it mental health consumer. And I was like, what the hell? It doesn't matter what the name is. Just treat the people. Help them. Find what's going on. Make sure that they feel safe and Anyway, I could go on, but I'm just saying that we really, as a society, have to change how we see mental illness and change how we treat people with mental illness. Like I said, I'm just a regular girl, grew up in the country with regular folks, brothers and sisters. A lot of stuff happened, and I'm on the other end of that healing, not for lack of, let me just say, the system has to be changed for people that are suffering from mental illness. Not only do you are you suffering with what you're suffering from? Most of the people that are in the system are struggling every day to get their basic needs even met. And then you have the judgment on top of that. Some people will never understand, and that's okay. Some people will never get to where some of us have been in that darkness, in that completely hopeless state, like really having to. If it wasn't for my faith, I wouldn't be alive. I guarantee you, with the mental illness that I have endured. But I also know that I'm really grateful to be here, because I want to be the voice for people that don't have a voice, and let people know that I fell through the cracks. There's lots of people falling through the cracks, and we are responsible for making sure that we take care of our most vulnerable in society. That's mental ill, that's veterans, there's a whole list, I'm just saying, and we can do better, especially when it comes to mental illness.
Well, you would think, as an advanced society, that we would be, but what I find in the general population, and I don't know what the reason is behind it, but people tend to be very judgmental, and I don't know if they're being critical to justify their own shortcomings by looking at the other person in a negative light. But with the so-called mental health issues, I mean, there is that dark shadow, but then the person becomes discriminated against. There's certain opportunities. Now, to go back and to something that was earlier said, with mental health, I mean, in psychology and behavior, it's a very complex structure. We have our brains is built up of neurons, and there's electrons, there's biochemical. So what can affect our behaviors, can be any of those components. It might be a chemical imbalance, that might create a certain thing. It might be, something that's happened, environmentally. It was a lecture from Dr. Korer, I think. I hope I can pronounce his name. He went and he said, something in our environment can also change our biochemical makeup, which can create, changes in our behavior patterns. But the general population don't understand how we work as a system. Unlike our four-legged critters, and they're complicated alone, but we have a larger brain, we have a larger hard drive, we have a more complex operating system, a human operating system than little Poochie over there.
And let me just add in there that nobody that's dealing with a mental illness, by the way, wants to be where they are. They don't choose that, and that's also another I think judgment that people like, oh well, they must have, they're no good, or welfare bombs, and I've heard it all, and grouping people together that's not helping the situation. Criticizing and judging does not help the situation. Individualization will help the situation. People paying attention and speaking out will help the situation.
Well, and each case is unique to that person. There's no two identical things. And the other thing, this is kind of departing from the perception of mental health, mental illness, is that I know I experienced this myself. Later in life, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, but I never knew that I experienced that. But when I look back on my lifestyle, it made sense. I used to drink a lot. I thought I was just a partier. Mm-hmm. But I was only drinking in social situations. Like, I never drank by myself. Mm-hmm. And after understanding, that I was suffering anxiety, then this all made sense. And a lot of previous behaviors that I emitted was all a way to compensate for the anxiety. But of course, at that point in time, I wasn't aware of that. It wasn't until after that I understood it. And again, I guess with my background in psychology, I was able to develop, some strategies. And mental health here in Fredericton, I mean, sucks the big hairy moose balls. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, the experiences that I've had with them. One, what is it called, the screening, and sometimes you luck out, they pair you with the right counselor, and sometimes they don't get it right, and
Yes.
you get it. And I've had some excellent counselors, but I've had some, at least as far as that individual and myself was the wrong match. I've seen in 1 year go through 3 different psychiatrists and 6 different counselors. So that's telling me there's something wrong with the structure, that they're not keeping their people, because it wasn't because, how can I say, it wasn't because of their competency. They were just going on to bigger and better things. So I suspect that they don't pay their psychiatrists and counselors all that well compared to the private side, because what's happened with most of the counselors, they just left the provincial mental health system and went into private practice, which is all great. But that
and a lot of times those files, those people, they get shifted around to different, by the time, and say they get used to working with a caseworker, and the next thing you know, they're starting to improve, and the next thing you know, their caseworker's pulled off their case, and they've got a new person, and they've got to adjust. And let me just say, first of all, we are people that are used to, we like patterns, we like, what's the word I'm looking for, routine, and any kind of change, like any kind of change like this can be traumatic to someone that's already suffering. So like I said, I really believe that, it takes a village, it takes a community. I really believe that, we have a lot of work to do, but I didn't want to stay silent anymore, because I am representative of, I've had my own journey of accepting who I am, and the parts that, the reasons that make me individual and different from the next person, might be perception in somebody's eyes as something that, I've got depression. Well, that depression and those things that I've made them work for me. I'm actually using that as as using the forum right now to speak about it, to help other people and give them hope. Because if I can come through all of the stuff that I've come through, and don't give up, like really, there's so many reasons to give up. There's so many messages. You're not worthy. No one cares. I had a lot of those messages, and I'm here to say that there is people out there that really care. And I've actually met a few people that are working in the system that really do give a crap about people, and bless them, and there's lots of people that are in here that shouldn't be working in the system at all, because they have no empathy, and there is a lot of judgment. But there's also some amazing people that God works through and helps people, and they're doing it for the right reason. But if I can fall through the cracks, man, I mean, I've spoke out publicly a few times on, on just being who I am, because I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of having depression. I'm not ashamed of having PTSD. I'm not ashamed of having a mental illness. And, it's not just the thing on Bell Canada, Let's Talk. It's about the whole world connecting and realizing that we're a lot more alike than we are not alike. And that's really the connection, because we've all experienced a mental illness at one point in our life. And anybody that's saying that they haven't, they're lying.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I smile a little back when you talked about routine. I'm on the Asperger's, and Asperger's rules. But one of the things that is characteristics with Asperger's is that we are very dependent on routine. We have to work in modular forms.
Yep.
We can't go to step Z before going through A, B, C, and D.
Absolutely.
There's pros and cons to that. But one of the things that you mentioned is what's happened to the empathy part from people in the community when they see, and related to that, because there's such a dark shadow around this concept of mental illness, that dark shadow is that people who are in crisis are less likely to seek assistance, because once you've been labeled as a Looney Tune, that label is dangerous. Even at work, I know one case. There was one establishment here in Fredericton, and of course, the reasons are obvious why I won't identify the establishment, but they tend to hire people that are on the autistic spectrum and various things. But what I've seen happen in that particular situation is that there have been some people that were very well and capable of working the cash, but they'd never move them into the cash. Instead, they keep them doing the menial task. Yet they were capable of working the cash. So they were dealing with these people as if they were mentally challenged or mentally limited in their abilities. To me, that's a form of discrimination. But how do we get the dialogue going that earlier when we were talking privately, the question of normality was we talked about. Well, to have a psychological issue is a normal thing. If you don't have issues, you're not normal, because we're exposed to so many different stimulus and different conditions. So, look, guys, if you're in a state of depression, that is normal. Now it's to understand: is it biological? Is it biochemical? Is it environmental? To understand it. Once you understand your situation, then and only then can you develop your strategies to cope with it. And from your discussion, out of your own experiences, you have found strategies that work for you.
Yeah.
Now, Charles is the kind of sitting beside you there. He doesn't know that he looks like he's falling asleep.
Is somebody going to acknowledge me?
You're just not as pretty, Charles. I hate to tell it to you.
You want my opinion?
Lost that match. Sorry.
I make my match. I say, ahead, or just listen. No, I mean, thanks for the acknowledgement. My God. I almost fall asleep. No, it's just that we're talking this afternoon. Won't mention any names. Anger issues, mental illness, anger. And I talked to a cop. I'll mention no names, and mention the guy's name, and the person told me there's a lot of people the same around the city. And this person, my opinion, mental illness, should be smart person, but he should be put in a mental institution for his own good, but he has to agree and to seek help. If not, what's going to happen? Going to end up in jail again, which he was. He has anger issues. And there's a lot of people like that. And the provincial jail is not the way to treat people with mental illness. I'm sorry. Can you imagine me with ADHD in the jail cell? Oh my God.
Well, you're only putting a Band-Aid on the problem. You're not actually working on a solution. That's the cycle keeps repeating itself. Those people that are keep ending up in jail, in the psych ward, those people are going through the same thing. It's the same thing over and over because nothing's changing. And we all know the definition of insanity, right? Doing something over and over again, expecting different results. And that's what's happening. Our system is broken, but it's also up to us as citizens, the people that vote people into office, to make sure that we use our voice and vote the people that are going to speak the best for us.
But that's another problem, because people with mental illness or less fortunate, their self-esteem is low, and they don't vote. They don't vote. I remember the last federal election, we went in the alleyway to get people to put in a car, say, you vote what? Am I allowed there? Am I allowed? And this,
well, that's the shame and the stigma because of mental illness. And number one, they don't feel worthy to vote. And that's so sad.
And they didn't want to vote. And then we said, hey, they're going to legalize marijuana. All right. And then they went to vote.
Get me in the back seat.
Yes, marijuana. Woo.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people honestly believe that they weren't allowed in that building.
Yeah. That's so sad. And I mean, those are the messages that they're getting from society. And look around. Like I said, I've been in the system. I'm so grateful right now to be where I'm at, but I did a lot of work. And I learned how to build, and, we all need tools in our toolbox to deal with the things that we're dealing with. And acknowledgement of, and allowing myself to just be who I am is the first step in healing, to accept yourself and love yourself first. And if you're not you're not going to get that from society. It's like society is not set up to support and uplift mental health, and that's why it's still a dirty secret. And I'm saying that, you know, it's still a dirty secret, and it shouldn't be, because
and is in our is in our justice system, and people just look at it and say, well, just don't break the law, then there'd be no problem. I mean, it starts with our justice system, and you got a person, these people usually have no family, no friends, and then they send them to St. John, female, Miramichi, and they don't even bring them back. And then they, oh my God, it's terrible.
If it wasn't for my father, God rest him, he's in heaven now with my mom and my brother, but if, you know, my mom was already passed when I was 18, but if it wasn't for my father, when I came home with PTSD, I don't know, I'd probably either be homeless or dead right now, because I didn't have the support from the system, from the, you know, I just didn't have it. And if it wasn't for my dad spending his money, making sure that I was okay and got what I needed, I would not have survived this, I guarantee you. So I'm just sending thanks to my dad right now, because and he didn't really completely understand me, but he had faith in me, and that means everything to someone. You know, it's the little things, and having one person believe in you can make a really big difference in your life. But when you get messages from society all the time that you're not good enough, or you're a welfare bum, or you're, you know, it's very discouraging, and, you know, it really does affect people's consciousness. It affects people's self-esteem. It's not human. It's not humane. It's not right. And I just feel really passionate about it, because I just want to be a voice for people that don't have a voice, and a lot of people won't speak up for themselves because of the shame. And I don't have any shame in who I am. I am who I am. God,
you better cut in, Andre, because you won't be saying a word between me and her. I'm talking now. But I'll tell you one thing. It's not racism. It's not discrimination, mental illness. It's, well, we got to deal with it. But there's not being gay. There is something that should be, they should protect people with mental illness. And make this very short, that's how I end up in Fredericton. I was working for Gulf Operators, an Irving company, and once they found out Irving sent me there, whatever, the Irving themselves. But make a long story short, I found out I had ADHD. I told them I have ADHD and I'm on Ritalin. It didn't go well, because I learned all I had to do was focus, keep my mouth shut, focus. And then it didn't go well. So I put a human rights complaint, and then somebody from the Irving sent a letter to the Human Rights Commission and says Charles LeBlanc told us during the job interview he had ADHD and he was on Ritalin. Therefore, he was limited to what he could do. He was placed on the job limitation program because of his mental disability. I go, mental disability? ADHD? I thought, I'll put on my resume, I have ADHD. They'll look at you and say, really? You're one of them? Oh my God. Anything that I'm interested in, I had the energy to excel. And that's where the New Brunswick Human Rights Commission reached a decision behind closed doors, said that people with ADHD were close to mental retardation. And that's where I live in a tent in front of the legislator, and the citizens were happy to see me move to Fredericton. Hurry up, Andre, before she butts in here.
Yes, because we're going to have to also limit our time. Like, I don't know if we've exceeded the half hour or so. Again, I always keep saying I'm going to set up a timer to tell
23
me
minutes.
23 minutes?
24 minutes now.
Okay, so we still have a little bit of time. Yeah, Charles, when you speak about ADHD, and same with Asperger's or anyone now, they've dropped Asperger's out of the DSM-5 has dropped it out. They call it all autistic, so I'm now autistic. But
the old DSM, eh?
Yeah, the old DSM. Yeah, God love it, eh? The politics of DSM.
Yeah.
But
it's basically putting everybody in a category is what it is. It's the diagnostic. I can't remember. I studied it years ago, but it's the Journal on Medical Conditions, and it's the universal, I guess, Journal of Medical Conditions.
It's the authority, right?
Yeah.
But by dropping out certain things, it's like taking the electromagnetic wave and saying, well, you can't use red to describe that color spectrum. You can't use it. We'll just call it all the electromagnetic spectrum. you know.
Are we becoming a science here now? We need some professional people to understand the language you're talking about.
Maybe I should fire up a doobie. And so I guess we do have to wrap this up. So
thank you, Andre. I thank you so much for just giving me a quick forum tonight. I felt really passionate about speaking out about, and now my guides and my angels doing work, just beginning my career as a medium. My guides and angels are telling me that's part of the reason why I chose to go through all my experiences, so that I am empathetic for other people, and that I am coming out of the other side, so I can actually let people know that there is hope, and I'm living proof that you can get through this stuff, and not to give up, and you are worthy. You are all worthy. Don't let anyone tell you that because you don't fit into their little box that you're not okay, because you are, and there is help out there, and keep pounding on doors and keep asking for help, because you are worth it. You are loved and watched over by God and the angels, and you are worth it.
Well, amen, sister. And Charles, any closing words or remarks?
No. Anyway, to educate people, and they respected knock at my door in the snowstorm. We just did this the last second.
This was definitely not planned, everyone. This was a snowstorm. This was I'm going to knock on the door and say we got to do this right now, because I just felt, when I was in between laughing and crying and wanting to pound my hands against the walls because of all the passion I feel about this, and that's the best time to come on here.
I'm sure our 5 viewers are very, very...
Four now. One went to bed.
One went to bed.
fell asleep.
Let's say we did this very impromptu. I never had a chance to promote it. And again, the technology that I have, hopefully
social media.
Hopefully it's working, that it hasn't blown up. The next show that I'll be doing, the one that will get a little bit of publicity before it goes, will be on the psychology of influence, persuasion, and propaganda. So I hope people tune in for that. So in closing, thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Charles. And until next time, I bid you bonsoir, and for the rest of you, good night, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Andre. Bunny love to you.